ESPN's Kylie McDaniel updated his top 50 prospects list and told us where he thinks some of the top MLB draft prospects from this summer would rank on that list. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, freelance baseball writer and podcaster. Thank you for making this your first listen. Every single day, we're probably part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and I want this to be your show. If you have questions, comments, concerns about the show, I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. You can email us, lockedonmlbprospects@gmail.com. Feel free to leave us a question on YouTube. Do us a favor, like and subscribe while you're there, or drop your questions in the Locked On MLB Prospects Discord. Links in the episode description, links in the show notes. So, Kylie McDaniel of ESPN updated his top 50 prospects list, and I thought it was really interesting and wanted to kind of dive into it because he did it a little bit differently than a lot of other people in the prospect apparatus do it, and I appreciate this approach. So, to kind of clarify up front the way that this works, and we'll link the whole piece in the show notes. I think it's an insider piece. You may have to have the subscription for that. But to clarify up front kind of how he does things is, one, he's following the MLB eligibility rules for prospects. So 130 at-bats graduates you from prospect status. 50 innings pitched graduates you from prospect status. Or 45 days on an active roster graduates you from prospect status. There are guys, I believe Gabriel Moreno was one of those that passed the 45 days, but didn't have the statistical milestone yet to be a prospect. And so in the offseason, like MLB Pipeline didn't have him listed because they went by MLB's rules, but Baseball America did. So those guys have been cleared out of here. And then, as of the date he was writing this, which it's dated for Wednesday morning, so yesterday, he said there's a couple players that are close to having enough days to graduate that he was going to go ahead and take off of this list as well. Shortstop Zach Neto of the Angels is off of the list because this, in the next week or two, this would be outdated if he was on there. Third baseman Brett Beatty of the New York Mets, he's off. Right-hand pitcher Grayson Rodriguez of the Baltimore Orioles, he is off. And so this, in essence, is the update that we'll see before, or the last update that we'll see before the MLB Draft and the MLB trade deadline. And the other thing that I really like about how Kylie did this is he sorted it into tiers based on future value. So, quick reminder for those of you who maybe aren't everydayers or just need a refresher. Everything's on the 20 through 80 scale, where 50 is average. You are an average, MLB regular. For a pitcher, we're talking about a number 4 guy. For a reliever, we're talking about one of a low-end closer or a high-end setup man. And everything goes up in half grades above that. So 55 tier is you are solidly above average. You are, if you're a pitcher, you're a number 3 or number 4. 60 is plus. That's one standard deviation better than 50. So if that's a number 3 pitcher for you. That's top of the line closer in the bullpen. A guy who would contribute about 3 WAR for you, according to Fangraph's definition of these. 65 is a perennial all-star. This is a guy who is going to win multiple all-star games. For pitching, it's a number 2, number 3. So, a lower end number 2 pitcher, higher end number 3 pitcher. A 70 grade is a top 5 player in baseball. It's a borderline number 1 to number 2 pitcher. A 75 grade is one of the 3 best position players in baseball, or an for sure number 1 pitcher. And an 80 grade is you are one of the 2 best hitters in baseball, and you are one of the top 3 pitchers in baseball. So that's how it works going up. Going down the opposite. A 45 guy is hitter-wise. It's a platoon bat or a utility guy. For a starting pitcher, it's a number 5, back into the rotation guy. A 40 grade for a position player is a bench piece, a 4th outfielder. things like that. For a pitcher, it's a swingman in the bullpen. It's a spot starter, things like that. And then 35 is an emergency call-up, and 30 is organizational depth. So on this new update in the tiers, and before the season when he put this out, Gunnar Henderson and Corbin Carroll were in there in the 65 tier, perennial all-star tier. On this update, there is nobody who is listed as a 65 tier player. So a little bit of lacking that incredibly, the top end of the list there from Kylie McDaniel of ESPN as far as the future potential of these guys. When you get to the 60 tier, there is 16 players that are listed, and this is the first time you start seeing people who are eligible to be drafted this summer. We'll get to them in the third segment, but there's a couple places where he lists where those prospects would come into the rankings once they are drafted and part of an organization. So 16 guys here. Notable to me, 3 of the top 4 are shortstops. Obviously, shortstop and center field are the 2 most common positions. And so he has Jackson Holliday at number 4. We've talked about him a ton, obviously. Marcelo Mayer of the Boston Red Sox at number 3. So it feels like Kylie McDaniel is the one that is highest on Marcelo Mayer. And I think there's a little bit of a conversation to be had and maybe a deep dive into some of the conflicting reports on Marcelo Mayer and where different members of the prospect apparatus stand on Red Sox shortstop Marcelo Mayer. I've been lower on him than some people, and I don't think I'd have him as the number 3 prospect in baseball, but Kylie does. And so if that's a show you want to see, leave a comment, Twitter, in the Discord, on YouTube. Let us know if you'd like to see a show where we take and break down the different scouting reports about a specific prospect that has wide variance in his projections and see if we can figure out what's right. Let me know if that'd be interesting. The number 2 prospect, not a shortstop, right-hand pitcher Yuri Perez, obviously debuted for the Marlins, has looked very, very good. We've been very excited about our tall king. And then number 1, shortstop Elly De La Cruz, one of the most exciting players in all of baseball. We talked about this, virtually there is no ceiling as far as what Elly De La Cruz could do. There is a lot of variance in that projection because at the end of last year, he had hit over 300 at every level with a strikeout rate of 30% at every level. And so we talked, I think last week, about we've seen him cut down the strikeouts a bit and we raise the walk rate a bit. And so you'll probably see him in Cincinnati sooner rather than later. He was not in the lineup on Tuesday for the Louisville Bats, and people freaked out thinking he was getting called up. They just gave him an extra day off. It was funny. Of interesting note to me is the 55 tiers right after this. There's 23 players there, but in this top 50, there are 7 catchers in the top 50. And I don't remember a time where we had that many catchers in a top 50. So it's Francisco Alvarez of the Mets at number 7. He is up. He'll graduate from that by probably the end of the summer. You've got Henry Davis of the Pirates at number 23. Diego Cartaya of the Dodgers at 24. There's another Dodger guy on here at 45, Dalton Rushing. You've got Edgar Cuero of the Angels at number 40. Indy Rodriguez of the Pirates at number 44. So 2 Pirates and 2 Dodgers. And then Ethan Salas of the San Diego Padres at number 28. Despite the fact that he is 16 years old and has not played an official pro game yet. He was signed, he'll turn 17 next month. And that's the assumption is they're going to skip him over the Dominican League and rookie ball and get him straight into low A pretty quickly. So Ethan Salas in there, 7 catchers in there, a total of 40 players that are considered to be above average in baseball to Kylie McDaniel. In just a minute, I've got a look at some of the top guys in the 50 future value tier, including some guys who have risen recently and why. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Bird Dogs. These are the most comfortable shorts on the planet. I am wearing them right now. I feel great. My lower half is fantastic. And I have to tell you, we just talked about the scouting metrics. These get an 80 grade for both comfort and confidence. These are 5-tool shorts, people, okay? These shorts are fantastic. I look good, therefore I feel good. When I feel good, I do better. When I do better, I get paid more. That's kind of how this works. The length of the shorts helps my confidence tool play up in games. So these shorts are fantastic. You can get shorts, pants, and joggers. You can get any of them with or without liners. They're incredibly comfortable. Again, 80 grade on both comfort and confidence. They are 5-tool shorts. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB. When you enter promo code LockedOnMLB, you'll get a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. So again, birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB, promo code LockedOnMLB for the only 5-tool shorts on the market. Okay, so in Kylie's piece, talking about the top 50 prospects in baseball on his re-rate, on his rewrite, obviously you have more than just 10 players in the 50 future value tier, but he only has room, obviously since he's doing a top 50, he only has room to include the top 10. And so I thought some of these guys were really interesting as far as the grades. And then after this, there's a couple guys who have taken significant jumps this year that are now 50 future value that were not entering the season. And I kind of wanted to talk about some of these. So the last 10 on the list, Luis Matos, San Francisco Giants at 41, Cole Young of the Mariners at 42, Brooks Lee of the Twins at 43, has him listed as a third baseman. We talked about shortstop versus third baseman for Brooks Lee. We already mentioned Indy Rodriguez and Dalton Rushing, the catchers. Kyle Manzardo, the first baseman for the Rays at 46. Tanner Bibby of the Cleveland Guardians at 47. Noelvi Marte, shortstop or maybe third baseman for the Reds at 48. Roman Anthony, right fielder for the Boston Red Sox at 49. Not a player we have talked about on this show, bookmarked for later. We're going to get to him. And number 50, Mason Miller of the Oakland A's, who rapid rise through, quickly flew through the minors, but he's been hurt a lot. He's hurt again right now. And so the question is, can he get back on the field, get back on the mound when he's healthy? That's been the concern. When he's healthy, he's great, but how often is he healthy? Availability is a skill as well. Some of the big risers in here, and some of these are guys you've heard me talk about before. AJ Smith-Shawver, right-hand pitcher for the Atlanta Braves. He went from A-ball to AAA in the span of 2 or 3 months. Gave up his first runs of the season last Friday. Heston Kierstad, right footer for the Baltimore Orioles, was held out of action for an entire year because of myocarditis. We talked about him. Obviously, big riser. Jonathan Clace, center fielder for the Seattle Mariners. He was a big riser, moved all the way up to a 50 future value. Another catcher didn't quite make it to that 55 tier, or make it into the top 50, but still a big riser. Moises Ballesteros of the Chicago Cubs. I probably got that wrong, but we'll cover him on a future show as well. Not a guy we've talked a lot about on this show as of yet, but there is a Cub. We've mentioned him before, but I still wanted to go over it. Ben Brown of the Chicago Cubs, the righty, is listed on here as a guy who has climbed significantly. And I've been really impressed with kind of what he's done this year. So 2017, 33rd rounder out of high school by the Philadelphia Phillies, was traded to the Cubs in the David Robertson deal, and has really not turned his career around, but has done a lot since he got in with the Cubs. So this year he's got 8 games. 4 of them are in AA Tennessee. 4 of them are in AAA Iowa. In AA Tennessee, 2-0 with an 0.45 ERA. 20 innings pitched, 30 strikeouts, so 13.5 per 9, to 6 walks, 2.7 per 9, 1 home run allowed. They moved, if you remember, the Southern League has that baseball. There's a lot of questions about how much of the improvement that these guys show is because of that sticky, tacky baseball, and how much of it is legitimate development. So the Cubs moved Ben Brown from AA to AAA. So he's now in Iowa. He's made 4 starts in Iowa. 1-2, 4.34 ERA in 18 2/3 innings. 25 strikeouts, so 12.1 per 9. Strikeouts drop a little bit. Not unusual going from level to level, so I get it. 10 walks, 4.8 per 9, 3 home runs allowed. I think this is a scenario where the AA ball was maybe helping him out a little bit more. and we're seeing him get a little bit back to normal or back to who he is, but he's still a good pitcher. So absolutely a power profile. Fastball, I'd give it a plus grade, runs up to 97 or so, has both a power curveball and a power slider. The power curveball sits in the mid 80s, a lot of like late, hard, downward bite to it, right? So it's just dropping below your bat. The slider sits high 80s, like 87, 88, 89. I've seen it on StatCast as high as 91, but a power slider kind of moves a little bit of a different direction. And then a changeup that is honestly not great. Something he's got to work on. He's got to get better at that. But when everything is on, you've got the fastball, stays up in the zone. You've got the power curve, drops down. You've got the slider one way and the change the other. The change, I think, is going to be the differentiator for how well can Ben Brown compete at the major league level. Can he turn over a lineup 2 or 3 times? Is he able to lay the tracks because he can go in any direction off of that fastball? So the changeup's the differentiator to me between he's going to be a guy and a dude. But either way, like what Ben Brown has been able to do, I completely agree with the move up to at least a 50 future value, if not higher. The other guy that moved up that I wanted to talk about, and it's another guy who spent time in that AA Southern League with the ball, is left-hand pitcher Andrew Abbott of the Cincinnati Reds. 2021 second rounder out of the University of Virginia. Got 3 games in AA, 15 2/3 innings, so average just around 5 a start. 1-0 with a 1.15 ERA, 36 strikeouts, so 20.7 per 9 to 3 walks, 1.7 per 9. No home runs allowed. Again, the ball helps with a lot of stuff. One of the ways that you can kind of see who's getting extra help on the fastball is in AA because of that sticky ball, is to look at how much added induced vertical break they get on the fastball. And so using a Major League Baseball, he was somewhere between 15 and 18 inches of induced vertical break. And then when he gets that tacky AA baseball in the Southern League, he went up to like 21. Okay. So they said, okay, all right, we need to get you out of the Southern League. They sent him to AAA, to Louisville, to go hang out with Ellie De La Cruz, and at the time, Matt McClain and Noelvi Marte and all those guys. And in the 5 starts he's made in AAA, 2-0, 3.60 ERA in 25 innings pitched, 37 strikeouts, so 13.3 per 9, to 11 walks, just under 4 walks per 9, 5 home runs allowed. So a lot closer to his traditional numbers versus that 20.7 strikeouts per 9 he was getting in the AA Southern League, but still being very effective. And another guy that the changeup is going to be the differentiator here. The fastball, even without that extra vertical break, is still good. He was getting a 32% CSW rate on the fastball. And again, you're shooting for 30%, knowing that usually breaking pitches are above and fastballs are below. So still a good fastball. It just didn't get the extra juice. He was having to do more stuff based on location in AAA with it. It sits 94, 95. Because of the added velocity, I think it probably has moved from a 50 grade like it was last year to probably a 55 or a 60. Because some of the induced vertical break that he added with the velocity has stayed, even leaving the new balls. The slider sits, it's weird. StatCast reads just a slider, but he says he throws, or I think it reads just a curveball, but he said he throws a slider and a curveball. So the differentiator here is how much horizontal movement they have. The slider is very much, it's in the low 80s. It's very much a sweeper. It has the horizontal movement to it. It'll get, I want to say like 1.5 feet or so. And so something that he's been doing, specifically made a point to try to differentiate the two of those. I want to say it's something like 17 inches he can get. So right around 1.5 feet of horizontal break with it. He really likes the curveball that he has as well. I think it's plus, throws it in the upper 70s. It is very much a vertical breaker. He had that all through college. That was the fastball curveball combo in college was kind of his thing. Changeup is a harder one of those changeups, around 87 or so, when again, the fastball's 94, 95. So you don't get 10 miles an hour separation, but it has really good movement. It's like a circle change. And honestly, that's the differentiator. That's what he's got to get worked out, just like Ben Brown, because when that's on, fastball stays up in the zone, slider, remember he's a lefty, slider breaks to the right, changeup breaks to the left, curveball goes down. You can hit any directions, and you're in 3 different velocity bands, low to mid 90s, you're in upper 70s to low 80s, you're in the upper 80s. So you can do 3 velocity bands and break in any direction. So I like what I see from Andrew Abbott. I grabbed him in Dynasty myself just because part of it was the AA numbers threw me off, but part of it was I really think he's that close to being a dude, and I just have to be careful about the ballparks. In just a minute, let's talk about where Kylie put some of the upcoming draft prospects in this summer's MLB Draft, or I guess where he would put them on this board. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Rocket Money. The whole try it free for 30 days thing, it'll get you every time. That's the business model of a lot of these companies. Give us your money and then forget and don't actually use our service. Most Americans assume they spend about $80 a month on subscriptions. The true amount's closer to $200. And if you don't know the exact amount for you, you need to try Rocket Money. So it'll quickly and easily find your subscriptions for you. You don't want to pay anymore, you just hit cancel. They'll take care of the rest. It's that easy. Maybe you go out there and you find, okay, yeah, I signed up for Stars back when Stars was a thing. This is dumb. Whatever it might be, I'm not judging. It's cool. But use Rocket Money. They can cancel it for you. No hassle. Rocket Money can also manage all your expenses in one place, automatically categorize them so you can track your budget in real time and get alerted if anything looks off. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money. So join that group, stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. Again, rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. Okay. I really like that Kylie McDaniel did this for ESPN as far as throwing in where some of the top draft prospects would end up on this list after they are drafted this summer. So he has one of them is in the 60 tier. So you'll remember the 60 future value tier. We had 16 players in there, and between spots 12 and 13, at a 60 future value is where right fielder Dylan Cruz from LSU would be, the projected number 1 overall pick. Can play center field. Is supposed to be a plus hitter, plus power, good speed. I mean, as close to a 5-tool talent as you're going to get. I say that jokingly. He came for a 3-game set. I watched him in all 3 games here in Auburn. And he went 2 for 12 with a walk, 2 strikeouts, and left 3 runners on base. I think he came up with the bases loaded one time and struck out. So I like to make the joke that he's supposed to be really good. The only time I saw him, he wasn't. But he is a very good. That was his worst series of the year, and he's rebounded since then. He's batting over 400 on the year. I want to say after 55 games, not counting the SEC tournament, he's batting 423, 573, 716. 14 home runs, 28 extra base hits, 56 walks to 34 strikeouts, and 5 of 5 on stolen bases. Dylan Cruz is very good. We're going to have a show coming up sometime soon with Locked On Pirates discussing Dylan Cruz versus Paul Skeens with the number 1 overall pick. It's not a choice to Kylie because Kylie has Paul Skeens as the first of 4 players in the 55 future value groups that he would have them between numbers 17 and 18. So right-hand pitcher Paul Skeens of LSU would be there. On the season for LSU, again, not counting the SEC tournament, 14 games started, 10-1 record with a 1.77 ERA in 86 2/3 innings, 164 strikeouts, so 17.1 per 9, to 15 walks, 1.6 per 9, and 6 home runs allowed. I watched Paul Skeens against Auburn go 7 1/3 innings, 6 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 15 strikeouts on 110 pitches. And I may have not, I don't think I've seen a pitching performance as impressive, in person, probably ever. But from a college pitcher, I have not seen an outing as impressive in a very long time. I had a TrackMan dashboard up in the press box in front of me, and so the fastball was sitting 98, 99, both four-seamers and two-seamers, all the way through the outing. I think the 109th pitch was a 99-mile-an-hour two-seamer. Command and control were both great. He was throwing a more of sweepy slider, sitting around 86, 87, and I watched him leave a slider dotted down and away on 3 consecutive pitches, the exact same spot on TrackMan all 3 times. He threw 3 sliders in a row at 87 miles an hour to the exact same spot. It was incredibly impressive. To go along with that, the changeup. I have never seen a guy be able to control the changeup and not only throw it for strikes, but do a lateral game with it and throw it to either side of the strike zone for strikes. So Paul Skeens was incredibly impressive. He started going to the changeup more the second and third time through the order. It was a lot of fastball slider dominance. He pulled the changeup in a little bit later, sequenced it really well. Very, very impressive performance. One of the best that I've seen. Probably the best I've seen in person. I'll say that for sure. And one of the best college pitching performances I've seen since maybe Steven Strasburg. I mean, that's how good it was. Kylie's got 3 other draft prospects in this top 50. Outfielder Wyatt Langford from Florida. 55 future value, would sit right behind Skeen, somewhere between number 18 and number 19. And for him, 48 games at Florida this year, 399, 527, 827 slash line. 16 home runs, 39 extra base hits, 44 walks to 34 strikeouts, and 5 for 5 on stolen bases. Has done a very good job of getting pitches to hit and doing damage against those pitches. They don't pitch around him as much because of Joe Caglione, like they've been pitching around Dylan Cruz. And they're like, yeah, we'll just walk you and we'll hit with Tommy. Like, we'll let Tommy Tanks hit with runners on base. We don't care. The other 2 prepsters, outfielder Walker Jenkins, 55 future value between 21st and 22nd, and then Max Clark, also 55 future value between 28 and 29. I feel like in a lot of mocks, Max Clark is going before Walker Jenkins, but either way, has both of them at those 2 prepsters in that 55 future value category. One more coming up, and then Monday's a mailbag. Remember, if you have questions for the show, I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. You can email us, lockedonmlbprospects@gmail.com, or drop your questions in the Locked On MLB Prospects Discord. Links in the episode description, links in the show notes. Until tomorrow's show, remember, it's always a great time to pay a minor leaguer.